How are we doing, everybody? Welcome back to the Sean Atwood channel. I'm Ron Swanson. We're live with Mathew Steeples. Let us know that you can hear me okay, hear Mathew okay. Ron forgot one of the cables for his mic, and we're on the headset. So I just want to make sure everyone can hear me. And I hope you're all having a good day. Thank you all for being here. We're here, of course, to continue discussing the Epstein madness. And who better than Mathew Steeples to take us on our next part? But before we do that, Mathew, how are you? How have you been?
I'm rather hot here in the sunny south of France. We've been having all the Bastille Day things going on here. The fireworks again last night. I don't know why. Bastille Day was the day before, but they have fireworks for 2 days in a row, and they will get rather worked up about this Bastille. They seem to have more holidays here than anywhere on the planet. And you can't buy a newspaper when there's a holiday, so you can't get a British newspaper, which is rather frustrating for the lady upstairs, who is, that keeps her entertained of a morning. So anyway, here we are, and it's glorious weather, and there's lots of lovely people here. Our friends from England are arriving today, fascinating people who, are really, really good people from England, and there's lots of lovely people from all over the world here, lovely Americans and some Germans and some French, and we've been having a jolly good time. So I'll be back in England within the week, however. So it's time to return to England. So this time I really have to go. So
gotta do it.
I will be paying you a visit in Edinburgh at some point.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it, Mathew. Now, what's your take on everything that's been going on in the news with regards to the Epstein case, the client list? Like, just give us your reaction to what you've seen in the media, and then we'll dive in a little bit.
Well, my reaction is from also personal contacts of mine who are associates of people involved in the matter and people who are in the address book. It doesn't mean, as far as I'm concerned, the address book is not Jeffrey Epstein's address book primarily. It was primarily Ghislaine's contacts. It may have been his address book, but he got involved with her on the basis that she brought to him people who were, relevant and useful and socially, useful. He would never have met Prince Andrew if it hadn't been for Ghislaine Maxwell. He would never have met half of the people in that book if it hadn't been for her. And I know people who are in that book, and they've all said to me, we never met this man, we met her. So this address book is they're making out all these things are new. I've had these things for years and years, and you can find them on the internet. People write to me and say, oh, could you give me a copy? I've said, well, just download it from the internet. And they go, well, it's blacked out. There are plenty of versions that are not blacked out. But I've spoken over the years with numerous people who are in that book. Now, some of them, like a lady who I know, Mrs. Swire, she's got one phone number listed, and she knew Ghislaine from social events in London, and Ghislaine lived in the same neighborhood as her. She said, I haven't seen this woman in years. I never saw her for many, many years because she moved to America. So, but then there are people like, say, the Duke of York, who there's 10 phone numbers. So there's obviously more connection. And, the likes of Peter Mandelson, the wonderful new ambassador to America for Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer's, the Farmer Harmer's great choice of ambassador to the US. There's probably 10 numbers for him. And, he went on holiday with him. He was pictured going shopping with him, buying belts. He was pictured in the Paris apartment having a birthday party with him. He made phone calls to him in prison. We know of all of this. Then Jess Staley, for example, the Barclays man, who's just been, fined an absolute fortune. And my friend here, Lucas, agrees, absolutely. Jeffrey's pimp, essentially. Yes, precisely. That is exactly what she was. He thought she would be a useful addition. But what I will tell you is my research shows something completely different to what is the narrative out there. Jeffrey Epstein was a taxi driver who became a teacher at Dalton School. And of course, Bill Barr, one of the US attorneys, his father was the head teacher at that school. You see the connection, it's a web of connections, and the address book is a web of connections. The list that everybody talks about, and the list that is igniting the internet and even upsetting, all sorts of random people to finally speak. JP Morgan paid out $280 million, you say, to apparently no victims, says Arsenal. I agree with Arsenal. I don't know if the sum is correct, but the number of payouts have come from not only the Jeffrey Epstein victim fund, but also from these banks. And there is lots of issues around, why were people like, for example, Jess Staley and his lovely wife, who, holidayed on the island repeatedly, and he was writing emails about Snow White. And I don't think Snow White refers to the white marching powder. I think Snow White was referring to little people. And what would you like? What would you like next, Mr. Staley? He was offering, and was it Beauty and the Beast? It was his emails, and he has tried and unsuccessfully to get himself out of this. This is a man who was the best friend of Peter Mandelson, our wonderful ambassador to America, good old Petey, as he called him. Peter Mandelson, the Prince of Darkness, as he was known when he worked for Tony Blair, is a very murky man. The only time I've ever met Peter Mandelson, weirdly, was at a party where I was standing with my friend Helen Lederer, who was an absolutely fabulous, and she's great, and Kathy Lett, the novelist from Australia, who's absolutely wonderful, great friend of Kylie Minogue, and she was married to George Robertson, the QC, and they're divorced now. Anyway, but and Katie Hopkins, of all weird nutcases. Katie Hopkins, the complete crank, great friend of Alex Belfield, another person who I have utterly no time for. And she's doing tours of England. But there I was with those four people. What a strange mixture. And Peter Mandelson, he is a brilliant manipulator. He is connected beyond belief. And that is why Epstein wanted him around. And all of these kind of people were brought for a reason. This is because I believe that Robert Maxwell met Jeffrey Epstein before he died. And before he died, in whatever way he died, Ghislaine believes he was murdered. Her brothers and sisters believe he was not murdered. So we have to figure out whether the truth of the matter is, did Ghislaine meet Epstein first, or did Robert Maxwell meet first? Because Robert Maxwell stole £500 million from his own company, the Mirror Group Pension Fund, and that money has vanished. It has never been found. And I have, I've done maps of this. I've studied La Hogue, which is a secret organization that was organized by a man called John Dick, who ultimately bought Liberty Media. He ran Liberty Media. He ended up owning Formula One. And when his daughter wanted to get married, there were the equivalent of the Panama Papers she found, because at his house in Jersey, he was American, but he lived in Jersey, the Channel Islands, and she wanted to get married in this squash court on the grounds, and she was never allowed to go in there when he was alive, and she discovered papers galore, and some of the papers link to the Maxwell family. So I believe La Hogue is where the money first went, and then it went from there to Panama. I have all the research. I've spent years researching this, Liechtenstein, all sorts of places, lots of shady people involved. I've got mind maps galore of all of this, and I am writing about it, but as I've always said to the publishers who I'm working with, we're not there yet. We're not nearly there. This is the tip of the story. And I do say to many of the people I know, that they came out with books at the beginning. Well, their books reveal things, but they didn't reveal the real story. And I always say, follow the money. This is a story about money and power. And this is why Donald Trump and all the rest of them are so scared, because they don't want any of this to come out, because it will make them look bad. And Donald Trump flew on the plane. He cannot deny it. Donald Trump according to there's a brilliant thing. I will send you the link. It's from the Daily Beast a couple of days ago. It's got videos galore. And Donald Trump, according to what's his name, Michael Wolff, Michael Wolff knew both Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. And Michael Wolff spent many, many hours, dined at the house of Epstein. He's got lots of stories to tell. And along with Steve Bannon, of course, Donald Trump's, former very close associate who's been in prison himself. This is a man, Wolff says of Trump and Epstein, friends since the 1980s. The two guys were joined at the hip for a good 15 years. That is how close they were. Donald Trump can deny all he wants that he has got links, and he has come out today. And it was said in the interview I heard on Radio 4 this morning. Donald Trump says, "I don't understand why anyone is interested. It's sordid, but it's boring." Donald Trump, on his election campaign, promised to release the list, and the public are rightly now annoyed because the list has not been released. It is time to release the list. And he's hiding behind a woman called Pam Bondi, who's Attorney General at the Department of Justice, and Kash Patel, two people who have repeatedly said in the past, "We will be releasing this list. The list's on my desk." And now they say, there's nothing. There's nothing. Crickets. Absolutely silent. Wolff rightly says, the Attorney General is meant to be the carrier of water for the United States. She isn't. She's Donald Trump's lawyer. That's how she's behaving. Donald Trump, since he's come to power for a second time, has adopted a different strategy because he's more confident. I actually think, the interview yesterday he did on BBC Radio 4, which was an off-the-cuff thing. The man wasn't even expecting it. He was worried he hadn't even pressed record, where he went on about how Brexit was, a bit of a sloppy disaster and all of that. And he was asked about the assassination attempt, and he said, he didn't trust anybody. He is handling himself very differently in his second term to his first term. And that is what I observe about him. I don't know Donald Trump. I've never met Donald Trump. I have been to the Turnberry Golf Resort, but that was before he owned it. And I had a wonderful time flying beautiful barn owls on a falconry course I went on. And I spent the night in the kitchen with the head chef drinking whiskey until 4 a.m. because, he was a great guy. But they all left when Donald Trump took over, so I haven't been back. But I did know Ivana Trump, my friend Liz Brewer, who was the PR, and I do believe Ivana Trump had a very mysterious death. Falling down the stairs. She didn't use the stairs; she used the lift. Why was there a coffee? Where was there a champagne glass, not a coffee cup, and all the rest of it? And she was buried very quickly. But and Ivanka I have met on occasion in London, and I did know the ex-wife of Donald Trump Jr., who of course is the ex-wife of Gavin Newsom, governor of California. But I don't know Donald Trump. I've never met Donald Trump. But Donald Trump comes across as a very strange man who is very brilliant, actually, at manipulating people. He's good at relationships. But then he's good at destroying a relationship. And that is what happened, I think, between him and Epstein. The relationship was no longer useful to him. So he's the worm that turns, is old Donald. And look at the way you have the picture of him pointing. That is his attitude. He is completely all over the place. One minute he likes NATO, he hates NATO, and the next minute he thinks NATO is a useful thing. Donald Trump is an unreliable person, and he's dangerous for that reason, because he turns. Look what he's done with Elon Musk, and look what Elon Musk's done with him. Both of them are megalomaniacs. One happens to have a lot more money than the other. One happens to have a lot more power than the other. And I believe Elon Musk is wasting his time. Of course, Elon was in photographs with Ghislaine. He claims that she photobombed him. Well, there are all sorts of emails allegedly between Elon and Ghislaine about, meeting to do yoga and all the rest of it. And, I even speak with Ghislaine's dog walker from time to time. and the dog walker knows more about anybody than anyone. It's the same with Bernie Eccleston. His ex-wife Slavica, her only friend is the dog walker. The dog walker is the person that people like Ghislaine confide in, because she actually uses the little people as she treats them, and she is that is part of her sense of entitlement. That is the wicked thing about Ghislaine. Ghislaine, her father once said, Robert Maxwell, the pension pot plundering, fraudster Robert Maxwell, of, a man of multiple names, a man who allegedly shot an entire village of people who had white flags when he was in the Czechoslovakian army, and he had no heart. He would relieve himself, and then he'd use the towels in the bathroom on his yacht, and then he'd throw them on the floor and make that so the maids would have to pick up. He would urinate off the top of his building in Fleet Street when he'd land in the helicopter onto the public below, because he had contempt for these people. He did have a major problem, though, and I can understand how he felt. He used to sit for hours on end watching videos of the Holocaust because he wanted to look for his dead relatives. And he had a sense of worry about that. And that was what sort of drove him in many ways to try and not end up in a bad situation. But he didn't do anything right. That man was a morally bankrupt disgrace. And he once said, "I have a beautiful daughter, and she's just like me." I would replace the word beautiful with despicable. And Ghislaine was abused by her father. I have plenty of evidence of that from, I know a psychiatrist who is a psychiatrist to, David Walliams and Ruby Wax and lots of other famous people. And he was the psychiatrist to a lady called Eleanor Berry. Eleanor Berry was the daughter of Lord Hartwell. Lord Hartwell owned the Daily Telegraph for a period, and Eleanor Berry was obsessed with Robert Maxwell. She claimed she was Robert Maxwell's lover. She is completely mad, but she claims in her book, which you can buy. I don't know whether it's still available. It was self-published, I assume, because no right-minded person would listen to Eleanor Berry. She claims that she witnessed Ghislaine, age 9. Sorry, I'm just going to have a glass of bit of wine because I'm.
Yeah, that's fine. No problem. No problem. Can you guys let me know if you can hear me any better now? And somebody said move closer to the microphone.
So Ghislaine, aged 9, was given the choice, so says Eleanor, Mrs. Berry, and it is recounted in this book. I can't remember the title of the book because I don't have it with me, because obviously I'm not in England. She went into Robert Maxwell's study after a Sunday lunch, and there was Ghislaine, and she said, "Daddy lets me choose." And there was a whip, there was a chain, there was a shoe, there was a ruler. And she said, "Daddy lets me choose which." And she thought this was quite normal. So many people who are abused, and one of the guests Sean often has on, Dr. Das, and I discussed this once, the Broadmoor psychiatrist. We discussed about, how many people who are abused become abusers. And the percentage I thought would be, 40%. He said, no, it's more like 75%. Because once you are abused, you don't actually think it's wrong to be treated like that in many cases. You don't actually realize if you're abused from a very young age, you think that's normal. And I think for Ghislaine, she didn't have a problem. And this is how she referred to the girls when this was referenced in the court case. She just thought that they were just scum. They were like something you'd wipe off the bottom of your shoe. And that is how she treated them. And she didn't like having to do sexual things with Jeffrey Epstein. She openly admitted that, though she did like to play lots of sexual games. And I think Ghislaine was bisexual. I think she's bisexual. I think she's into anything. I think Ghislaine, in her house in Manchester by the Sea, which I was one of the first to get photographs of, like I was one of the first to get, weirdly, a lot of things with Ghislaine are about bathrooms. It's Jeffrey Epstein's bathroom, lots of photographs. The house where obviously Prince Andrew in London, which is, I got the photographs of the bathtub and I did the story with the Daily Mail. And then the house in Manchester by the Sea had a 9-person, what she called a party shower. It had Wi-Fi, it had a television in it, it had all sorts of things. She likes bathrooms. Ghislaine is a very strange person. Lock her up in the loo, I say. That's where she belongs. But her lavatorial sense is very strange. And according to the guards at the prison, she was a very dirty person in the bathroom area as well. And she never flushed the loo, for example, which the prisoners were complaining about. Fellow prisoners were complaining about the smell. So Ghislaine is like her father. Very much, completely inept at dealing with anything for herself. She expects the little people to pick up the pieces and look after her. But she is somebody who was using these girls because it meant that she didn't get attacked by him, because he was obviously in need of lots of sexual activity. There was a man, Christopher somebody or other, British man who lives in New York. He is completely nuts, and he had to write a song for Jeffrey Epstein's birthday party because he was this sort of supposed wit. He's not witty at all. He's complete Burke. And he wrote a song, and it was about, oh, Jeffrey, oh, vey, oh, yeah, and all this. And it was like he needs 5 girls a day or something. That's how it went. And his sexual appetite was obviously very huge. And, he had this strange thing about genetics also. And according to another of your guests, Juliet Bryant, he had this thing in New Mexico where he was he wanted to make millions of versions of himself because he believed there should be millions of Jeffrey Epsteins running around the world. And that has been talked about by many others. But she claims that he turned into Satan and all the rest of it and the devil. And I don't believe all of that. I'm sorry. I think coming out with claims like that is just silly, because obviously he wasn't the devil, and he didn't turn into some monster. He's a human being. He was a human being, but he was just a monstrous human being. I will agree he was a monstrous human being, but he wasn't physically a dragon or whatever she claims, because that's making everybody else look stupid coming out with claims like that. But this list, it was very strange that it was released on that they wouldn't be releasing a list on July the 6th, 2019, because obviously that is today, the July the 6th this year, because July the 6th, 2019 was the very same day when, Jeffrey Epstein got into his Maybach Mercedes in Paris, and he went to the airport, and he flew to Teterboro, the private airport, and he was arrested. And that was that. So they've waited. They chose a very specific day to come up with this. Michael Wolff was meant to have a breakfast with him the next morning, but he never turned up because he was obviously in the pokey. So that was the end of that. But the first person to call Michael Wolff was Steve Bannon. He said, he was a concerned friend of Epstein, and Steve Bannon supposedly has 16 hours of recordings of Jeffrey Epstein, and he hasn't released those. So what are on those recordings? We want those released too. I'd like to see what goes on those recordings. It would be very interesting to know. But during the 2016 campaign for Donald Trump, when Steve Bannon was really, really involved, before obviously, he incited all those people to do all that rioting and all the nonsense and got sent to prison, and then got help from old Trump. He said, you were the only person I was ever afraid of, says of Epstein. That's what he said to Bannon about Epstein to Wolff. So there we go. Anyway, I don't know if you have any other questions about.
Oh yeah, that
talking was rather too much.
No, that's what you call an extra value question that we got there. That was a good 25 minutes. I like it. So you mentioned that the address book. Okay, a few of the viewers last week, Mathew, were commenting on perhaps Trump had decided to keep all of the contacts, all of the address books, to further his power position for blackmail use or for the good of America or things like this. Do you think there's possibly another layer to Trump, that he would keep all this for himself and use it as some sort of tactile advantage, not just in power, but also after his term is over?
Well, I think that Donald Trump all the talk of him pardoning Ghislaine is a load of rubbish. Ghislaine will not be pardoned, as has been announced. I've got the Daily Telegraph article here from this morning that I've cut out because I've managed to get a newspaper today, because one of the locals actually allowed me to get a newspaper because they now reserve them. So I have to reserve the newspapers. How ridiculous is that? But they did not give her any kind of appeal. She's not allowed to appeal. But all these people have been talking about how, it'd be better for him if he pardoned her because they are friends and there's hundreds of photographs of them together. And, you can see they've met on multiple occasions. And, Donald Trump was friends with the father. The father was some kind of intelligence operative. The man had been an MP. He'd been in the army. He'd been involved with Israel. He'd been involved with lots of different. I think he was very involved with Mossad. The man was buried on the Mount of Olives, for God's sake. Every world leader went to his. Everybody was scared of Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell shouted at me as a child. I've experienced Robert Maxwell. He was a nasty piece of work, and nobody will miss him. And my friend John Sweeney wrote the book about the story of Maxwell, and we did a thing at the crime conference thing, CrimeCon, and I spoke with him, and he believes that he was murdered, and I believe he may have fallen off the back of the boat, but the way his body floated was very strange. Normally bodies float face downwards, and he floated face upwards. And they do say he was probably injected with something, but he did have a habit of going again, and lavatorial habits. Sorry, it's disgusting to be talking about such things at lunchtime.
Sometimes it's got to be done, Matthew.
He would go and relieve himself off the back of the boat, and I think he probably tried to commit suicide. I really do believe that, because he knew his time was up. He'd gone on a boat by himself. He never normally went on the boat by himself. He'd ordered all sorts of things were turned off that evening, and then he went down there onto that thing in the middle of the night, and none of the staff saw him, which shows that his staff were pretty useless, because normally on a boat you have a watchman. And once he got into the water, he suffered regret, because on his arms were marks, and I think he tried to grab back onto the boat, and he couldn't, because he was so fat and the boat was going too fast, so he couldn't physically get himself back on, so he floated away, and that's how he died. But the question that the conspiracy theorists come up with is, why was he floating the wrong way? And that is interesting. So sorry, I've gone off on a tangent here.
That's all right, don't worry.
Yeah, but I do think that his involvement with the Mossad was probably no longer useful as an asset, because he'd become a liability because of what he'd done with stealing money, because his house of cards was spinning around, and he couldn't. It was like Bernie Madoff. Once you don't get more money coming in, you can't keep the whole thing spinning. So he with Bernie Madoff, it took my friend's cleaner, who wasn't paid $20,000, and she was the one that went to the FBI, and that was it. And the whole thing crashed down, and they lost $800 million, and that was the end of that. But with this Maxwell, I think she had the same situation as with her father, with Epstein. I think Epstein was connected with security services, and I think Donald Trump knows full well of all of this. But he was quite happily tied to him like a bond for 15 years. They were bonded, as Michael Wolff rightly says. And Donald Trump is not Mr. Innocent, just as Bill Clinton is not innocent. So I am not saying that, Donald Trump is alone in all of this. Bill and Hillary, as I call her, people who upset Mrs. Clinton seem to meet unfortunate ends, as one security guard of theirs once said to me. Honestly, these people are all linked. And there is a web, and there is something to do with intelligence services, of course. And we're unlikely to know any of this because it's classified. And Donald Trump is able to hide behind the classified. And I do think that's what he's continuing to do. And I think he'll continue to do it for a very long time. I don't think he will be pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell before he leaves office. He may choose to do so when he leaves office. I think it's still highly unlikely. I think he would rather not go down that chapter. As he said, I don't understand why anyone is interested. It's sordid, but it's boring. You know, he did say when she was arrested, I wish her well. You know, she was arrested at the house which was called Tucked Away. That is how arrogant she is. She bought a house called Tucked Away to hide in. And then she covered her mobile phone with tinfoil, which is the most stupid thing to do because it doesn't work. The tactic does not hide your mobile phone. She's an absolute bizarre person. But she's always been completely nuts from what I gather. And, you know, I was one of the last people to see her in England, and she is completely mad.
Okay, so I just want to circle back to Trump one more time, and then we'll move on.
From Trump. Sorry, I diverted on.
Sorry, no, it's okay. Do you think, because I've got this feeling in the back of my mind, that once he's out of being president, it leaves him very open to be able to say, well, there may have been a list behind the scenes and use it to his advantage. I feel like the existence of even the address book could be used as a serious advantage, not just in the political side of Trump, but in the business sense afterwards. Do you think that Trump
I don't think the address book is that important. I don't think it's very important at all because it's been out there for so many years. The flight logs are very much more interesting. So they've been out there for years. It's what this dreadful woman, you know, this useless Pam Bondi, who should be fired from her job, as should this Patel, Kash Patel. He should be fired as well because they have lied to the American public. The American public.
Mathew, let me know if my mic's better. Mathew, your mic has went quiet.
Oh, can you hear me now?
It might be me. Can you all tell me if Matthew's went quiet or if it's just me, please, side chat?
Hello? Hello?
Ron's breaking everything. Echo is bad. We hear Mathew. We can hear Mathew. Okay, that's fine. So, Mathew, give me a second.
Okay. Shall I keep talking?
Yeah, keep talking, brother.
Okay, well, you know, she's been refused her appeal, and it's quite correct that, you know, this is a woman with arrogance galore. She went on the Jeremy Kyle show within prison. You're not allowed to be doing things like that. In Britain, it's certainly not allowed without, you have to go through a process, you know, with my friend Mark Alexander, who, well, I don't know Mark, I've never met him, but I deal with his campaign team very much. I went to a court hearing about... he wanted to do a media interview, and that had to go through the Royal Courts of Justice just to get even allowed to have the access to do the interview. How on earth did Jeremy Kyle get into prison Tallahassee in Florida with her brothers and, you know, her disgusting friend, Mrs. Barack? I forget her name, but she's related to the Barack people, the former president or prime minister of Israel. And they managed to conduct an interview with Jeremy Kyle. You know, Ghislaine talks a load of rubbish, but she somehow gets away with it. She barricaded herself in the prison library on one occasion when she was in the Metropolitan Detention Center awaiting trial. And, you know, she does very strange things, yet she thinks that all these people should kowtow to her and give in. You know, the lawyers are all suing her because she hasn't paid their bills. You know, she's got money galore hidden away. She was a liar. She lied about so many things. You know, she lied about the bathtub. I proved that because she said it was too small for anything to occur in because it was a half bathtub. It was not a half bathtub. I went there and I measured it. And that's why the Mail did the story with me. We did fact checking. It is, you know, right to check a fact. A fact is not a fact until you've proven it's a fact. And her bathtub was a full-sized bathtub. Anything could have gone on, even in a small bath. It even had a shower in the bathroom. She said the bathroom is too small for anything to go on. It had a huge shower as well as a bath. It was not small. So she lied about that to the FBI. That is documented. And I proved that as a lie. She lied about lots of other things. You know, she is completely ridiculous, and her lawyers have not been paid. And who wants to represent this mad woman who seems to think that everybody should just do what she wants for free? Why should a lawyer work for nothing? And if I were a lawyer, I would say, no thanks, walk away. Don't even go near the nutcase. And there she is. And I was on the phone to a Daily Mail journalist last night late on, and we talked about how, you know, the whole thing about how she was refused her appeal. How is it that she's then photographed and videoed running around the prison grounds at 8 o'clock at night? She must have some connection that she's calling up and they're coming to take photographs for her. She is playing a game, and she's playing the public, and she's manipulating as usual. Ghislaine is a wicked woman. She's a nasty piece of work. She's a mucky madam, and she's a total disgrace.
Yeah. See, I just have this feeling, Mathew, that we've seen the Diddy case go through the courts, and all possible charges that would connect to a RICO case or a global PDF group or anything that would tie politicians seems to have been eradicated from the case. And then the next step was the Epstein case. We've had Virginia be, you know, unalived. And now
we've yet to get on to Virginia, and Virginia. I only ever spoke with Virginia once, but it's very tragic the way she died. I will say that.
Yeah, and her entire legacy is now being pulled apart. Do you think that this is evidence that the powers that be in America would rather sweep any charges that could tie in globalists into these cases than admit that there is a global issue here? Like, where do you stand on that?
Well, I think that the whole lot of these people are very worried about her talking, but she is so arrogant that she actually believes these people are still her friends. I don't think she's that much of a danger to them for the moment. I don't think she is a danger, because she probably imagines that she's going to get out, and she's going to come out and give a nice interview, and she's going to be pardoned, and and then they'll all be friends again, and then she can have another party with them. And I don't think anybody in their right mind would want to be photographed ever again with Ghislaine Maxwell. But it is an absolute disgrace. I'm being asked on text message, what am I drinking? There we go. It's a bit of Viognier, so a nice affordable French wine from the lovely shop in Saint-Tropez. There we go. So nice. That lightens the mood. Well, and Ghislaine won't be getting any Viognier for a very long time. She won't be getting So, you know, she's there. She is. This is another of her little tricks. Oh, she's vegan, of course. So she gets special food in prison, and she complains about the food all the time. Oh, Ghislaine is a whinge bag. She is a complete spoilt cow. Let's be honest. She's a disgrace in every sense of the word. That woman is a pain in the arse. Let's be honest. She is a nuisance, and God knows what she did to other people. She was known for grabbing people's breasts and all sorts. She was very sexual, that's what my sources tell me, who knew her in the 80s. And when she ran her Kit Kat club, it was a kind of social club in London. And I know people who were part of this, and it was based on an 18th century concept. And she tried to connect people, and she had parties at the Chelsea Physic Garden in London, which of course is the only place where it's legal to grow cannabis because it's a medical garden. A wonderful garden. If you ever get a chance, go there. They do a beautiful Sunday lunch, and it's not very expensive, and you have to pay to get in, but it's a lovely garden, and it's full of beautiful plants. And as you know, I love gardening, so there we go. So but no, that was where she used to hold. Well, that's one place she held an event, but I don't know where else she was doing that. But Ghislaine she was a social being, and she was a great connector. You can see this from her address book, and you can see this from, you know, the likes of Boris Johnson's poisonous sister, Rachel, who, when she was arrested, she came out and said, it's impossible not to feel a bat squeak of pity for Ghislaine. Well, what about feeling a bat squeak of pity for the victims? And Richard Madeley, dirty old Richard Madeley, who looks a bit like Donald Trump, with all that permatan, and Richard Dick and Dude, the champagne lifting Richard, who when he interviewed another associate of the whole lot, Bill Clinton, he said, I feel I understand you because I was accused of something, but I was accused falsely. So that's what he said of Monica Lewinsky. He was like, I got accused of champagne stealing, and that relates to you being accused of what you did with Monica Lewinsky. And there we go. So, Monica is actually an amazing lady because she's actually a victim who's come through a story, and she's able to become an advocate, and that's an amazing thing that she did. And I was at the university at London School of Economics, and she was there at the same. I didn't know her there, but I met her socially through Heather Kersner, who was married to Sol Kersner, at a charity gala. And Monica Lewinsky has been able to turn her victimhood into advocacy, whereas poor Virginia, the difference is Virginia Roberts Giuffre, there were so many people out there who were just saying, oh, she's just a silly tart, and it's her own fault for getting herself into that. And obviously that weighs on your mind. And being the way she settled with Prince Andrew, why would you pay Prince Andrew if you weren't guilty of something? The photograph is real. I've been in that house. I know that photograph is real. I had a lady on to me this morning saying, she's a great friend of all of these people, and she and I tend to differ. Sean Atwood has been to her house with me. She's a lovely lady, but we differ on this. And her husband is a man who helps Prince Andrew in a lot of ways financially, and ex-husband. And she and I have differing views on the whole matter, but we agree to differ on it. It doesn't matter. That's the thing, but we're still friends. But, she goes around with the lady called Victoria Harvey. Victoria Harvey is the one who's been trying to rubbish Virginia. And when Virginia died, the things she came out with were toxic. Lady Victoria Harvey is somebody who really should keep her mouth shut. She doesn't know anything about it. Prince Andrew never comments even on anything she says. Nobody wants anything to do with Victoria Harvey's nonsense. Victoria Harvey is just getting paid for coming out with this horrible stuff about poor Virginia. Let's remember, Virginia is the mother of several children, and those children now no longer have a mother. Whether the allegations against Virginia's husband are true or not, we will never know, will we? Because they've never been tested in a court of law. It's her versus her husband. Maybe the husband is telling the truth. Maybe she was telling the truth. We will never know that. They were together for a very long time. Were they happy? Who knows? But Virginia was obviously a lady troubled by what had happened to her since she was a child. Virginia was first abused at the age of 14. And then her father put her to work in Mar-a-Lago, which is where she encountered all these people. But then you could say, as many of the other people I've spoken with have said, Virginia did bring in, like Ghislaine, other people. So she was a recruiter as much as she was a victim in some senses. And, that is where people have the problem with Virginia. I can understand that. But the lady had met a tragic end, and it's a tragic end to a terrible story for her. She may have had all that money, and she had a lovely farm and all the rest of it, and a big house, but she still wasn't happy, was she? So, she wouldn't have ended her life the way she did. And do I believe that there was some kind of conspiracy to kill her? No, I don't believe in it like that. I think Virginia Roberts just chose to end her life because she'd had enough. She couldn't cope with any more of it. And I understand that is a tragedy, in my view.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a lot of things that you and I disagree on, Mathew, and that's definitely one of them. But what do you feel?
Yeah. Well, no, but that is the debate. That is why people
absolutely.
That is why we're making this program. If we agreed about everything,
absolutely,
the world would be boring. If you tell a story that is just flat. It's just simply public relations. And I'm not in the business of public relations. I speak my mind, and I do my research, and I check facts. I think that's why the New Yorker is one of the greatest magazines out there, because what they've done with Jeremy Bamber, for example, 18,000 word article by Heidi Blake, fact checking. And that brought everybody I know who's seen that article they've gone from saying Jeremy Bamber is 0% innocent to it's 90% doubt. And that is what proper journalism is about. You have to check facts, and you have to dig into the information. And in my case, I follow the money, and that is the best way of doing it in this case, because Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein is about money. How did a school teacher who was a taxi driver end up in $100 million mansion given to him as a gift, and he paid $1 or whatever to Leslie Wexner? And what is Leslie Wexner's involvement? Leslie Wexner is Victoria's Secret. As we know, he owned this LL Brands, and of course, the involvement of the things with the boys as well. The terrible I forget its name, that awful fashion brand. I've forgotten it. That's been another scandal recently. The what's it called? The T-shirt brand. I don't know. They only had one, male models, and the men were the chief.
Abercrombie and Fitch. Thank you, Helena.
Yes.
Abercrombie and Fitch.
Abercrombie and Fitch. That's all of these people are linked, and there we go. It's an absolute disgrace that all of these people. And then there was Peter Nygaard, another associate of Prince Andrew, pictured. He's, of course, now in jail, and his own son has been on Sean Atwood's program, and I've spoken with his son. They've disowned their own father. And, who paid for their holidays, for the holidays of Prince Andrew and Fergie and good old Eugenie and Beatrice? Peter Nygaard. They're all photographed, looking nice. Prince Andrew does seem to attract interesting, lovely people, doesn't he? Good class people like dictators and despots and Chinese spies and Peter Nygaard and Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson, another good friend. I think it is an absolute shameful thing that Keir Starmer has appointed Peter Mandelson as the British ambassador to Washington. It brings shame on the office of ambassador to the greatest ambassadorship you could ever give. There've been a repeated number of bad ambassadors. Of course, I had legal problems with the Sir Christopher Mayer myself, because I helped expose his corrupt wife, the dodgy wife for her dodgy charity. She's now in the House of Lords as a baroness in her own right. He's dead. But, we've had some very bad ambassadors in Washington. We've had some very good ones. But in this particular instance, it's an absolute scandal that Peter Mandelson has been rewarded, and the only newspaper that really have had a proper pop at him and a proper go at him were the Financial Times, and they interviewed him on a train. I think it was a train journey. It was a sort of conversation on a train, and they asked him about this, and he told them to F off, basically. He had enough, and he didn't talk anymore because they dared ask him about this. And well, the photographs don't lie, do they? Though obviously Victoria Harvey would claim the photograph was probably made up, but there he was trying on belts and wearing a very expensive watch, which how could he afford this very expensive watch on his salary at that time was a question that was asked. But this man he was there in the Paris apartment having parties with him. It's an absolute scandal. It's an absolute disgrace. So I just think that, the associations that they've all had, and Kevin Spacey, now he's another one. Let me have a word with you about Kevin Spacey. He's been on the Twitter. He's been on the old Twitter.
1 second, just before you do, Matthew, can you all please do me a favor and like and subscribe? Give us a little share. Matthew's links are in the description, and we really do appreciate you guys being here and commenting and all of that.
Will you please also go on the change.org page and sign my petition? I'd like you to sign a petition. I've been campaigning to stop the keeping of sloths, beautiful sloths that live in the rainforest as pets in mansions in Kensington, because in the UK, sloths are allowed to be kept as pets. They are solitary animals, and please sign the petition. I want Keir Starmer's government to do something about banning the keeping of sloths as pets. The likes of Tamara Eccleston.
Matthew, give us a good start that again. Give us a 3 to 4 minute campaign message on why we shouldn't have sloths as pets, please. Because
sloths are solitary animals that belong in the rainforest. They are not animals that want to be touched. They don't like physical contact. They don't have they live in the trees. They don't even come down to meet with one another. They will hide away as much as they can. And this silly little idiot, Tamara Eccleston, decided to bring them in for her children. You can find a photograph of her children playing with it in an £85 million house in Kensington. You know, they shouldn't be in air-conditioned houses in the middle of Kensington, or heated houses as they were, because it was in the middle of winter.
Oh my God!
They should be in the rainforest. And that she decided to put up this picture was enough to make me actually look into how it wasn't.
Mathew,
I'm not actually attacking her.
I'll be honest. No, I'll be honest. When you said as pets, I'm imagining like these big glass ecosystems where the animal's sort of existing in its natural environment, so to say. Look at this. This is her living room. This is just chilling in her living room.
But that animal will be terrified, and it's not suitable to put that animal in that situation. It is unkind and it's cruel.
Yeah, literally a mother sloth. If her baby falls off her back, she'll just wait until the next time she goes down the tree to get her baby. Like, they're a very interesting breed of animal. But to have it like this
I did not know that legally you are allowed to do this. So she probably brought it on her private jet and brought it to our house. That's probably what happened. You know, because her father has a place in South America, so where he makes what's called celebrity coffee. I think the most naff name for a coffee brand I've ever heard of, because he likes coffee. Dirty old Bernie, the $700 million fraudster. Of course, Bernie Eccleston was photographed on the yacht. Find the photograph of Naomi Campbell's birthday party with Virginia. You will see Bernie Eccleston in the background. Bernie was there with Flavio. Of course, he was dating Naomi at the time. And so Flavio had Virginia wearing the same outfit that she wore with Prince Andrew's birthday party. And we've talked about this with Sean before. The outfit, what they do, these kind of people with these girls, because this is what I experienced from somebody who was the son-in-law of Bernie Eccleston. You know, when they would have these girls come out for dinner with them, obviously these girls would turn up in their own clothes, and their clothes were not the kind of clothes that, you know, their wives or girlfriends or people of their own social status would wear. So that the butler would keep in the cupboard clothes that could be worn by such people. And Virginia wore the same outfit on 2 occasions, the Prince Andrew meeting and on the yacht. So that was a birthday party for Naomi Campbell, and Virginia was in the background. Ghislaine was there. I don't know if Jeffrey was actually on there. Jeffrey Epstein was on that thing at that very time. But honestly, you know, you can see the outfit, and how does Lady Victoria Harvey deny that woman is making it up when the outfits are the same outfits as well? You know, in 2 different settings. So. Are all the photographs faked? You know, is the photograph of Bernie Eccleston being on a boat with Virginia faked?
Right.
It's an absolute travesty that these people get away with telling such lies. So that's it. But going back to Kevin Spacey, another little creep who, of course, you can find a photograph of Kevin with Ghislaine sitting in Buckingham Palace on a throne. Obviously, she went there together with him, and Kevin Spacey has taken to Twitter yesterday, and he said, release the Epstein files, all of them, for those of us with nothing to fear. The truth can't come soon enough. I hate to make this about me, but for the media already has. And the response, ultimately, you know, the general response was, for some reason, I find this post incredibly amusing. You know, Kevin Spacey is a disgraceful man. My friend Stephen Burkhoff was cancelled by Kevin Spacey when he ran the Old Vic Theatre because he viewed Stephen Burkhoff to be somebody who spoke out too much. Stephen Burkhoff is one of the most brilliant actors, producers, and writers in the world, and he speaks an utter load of sense. Whereas Kevin Spacey is a man who, okay, he's not been convicted of anything as of date, but he has been shown to be a very strange man, and he is extremely weird. And look at his associations from, you know, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. He flew around the world with Jeffrey Epstein, and now he's bleating like a pathetic little person that he is. You know, his own brother turned on him and said he was a disgrace. And, you know, the TV show was a very good thing. I've spoken about the TV show at length in the past, but I do not like Kevin Spacey because of the way he treated the shame of thrones. That's exactly it. Precisely. He is not somebody fit. Look at his arrogance, sitting there like the queen bee along with the lunatic. You can see what a lunatic she is by the way she's waving her arms around, and look at the way he's waving. Look at him. He's the smug cat that got the cream, isn't he? He is an absolute horror, that man. And I really think, you know, once he dies, it'll be another one, just like with good old Jimmy Savile. They'll say, oh dear, we got it wrong. You know, look at him with Prince Andrew, good old friend. And, you know, Kevin Spacey, there's something very spaced out about his nasty, he's a nasty little rat, that man. Anyway, so his downfall when it eventually comes.
Cheers. All right. So before we get to some viewer questions,
right,
I just wondered
next question.
If we had, well, first of all, can you guys hear me okay? I've put a different microphone in. It's the one that's up here now. So
allegedly I can be heard, and I'm normally the one with the technical issues. I'm absolutely hopeless on this nonsense.
You sound great. I've got a new USB mic that I'm gonna.
I've even managed to get a cable outside, so I'm plugged in, and the power won't run out. And God knows how I've done it. But
you've done a great job.
I built a studio, and you can watch a little video of my mini studio on. The thing, unfortunately, we haven't got any birds here. The birds have gone, but I was banned from giving the birds water the other day by a neighbour. They came round to give me a telling off. They said no water for the birds, and I called the local security guard because we live in a gated compound, basically, and you know, it's like Coronation Street, but for posh people here. And the security guard said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Just ignore them." So yesterday I did do a little video, and many of my viewers want me to buy a bird bath before I leave, so we're going to buy a bird bath. And my legacy for the old birds, because
that's epic.
Yes, so
that is such a good idea. That is such a good idea, man.
So thank you to all my lovely viewers who gave some donation. I didn't ask for I did not ask for any donation, but they decided they wanted to contribute, so they gave some
the
money.
Germans.
But there we go.
Miss Marple knows.
Yes.
She's heard the same stories as I have. It's too funny.
Yes. Well, you know, we've got some lovely German neighbors, and then we've got the one who decides she hates the birds. And I saw her hitting a bird with a stick, and you're not allowed to hit seagulls. They're protected species, so she shouldn't be doing that. It's not very nice. And this man decided he would come around and tell me I'm not allowed to give them water. Well, if I want to put a bowl of water in the garden, I can do whatever I want.
That's too funny. It's the sheer lengths they've went over this. You've given the birds some water.
I realise that some of them own boats, and they don't want the boats to be invaded by the birds. I can understand that washing a boat is a very time-consuming thing, and they do spend a lot of money washing their boats all the time.
That sounds a lot like
a first world problem. Hey, a first world problem.
Can't put any water.
Let's go back to the what was your next question? Because
so before we go on to the viewer stuff, I just wanted to get your opinion on Kash Patel and the way that he's been running around and trying to, in every way shape that he can, bolster the narrative that Epstein unalived himself, the narrative that there was never any client list. And have you seen or heard any of the controversy over the footage that was allegedly released of Epstein's cell?
Well, the pictures of the cell obviously show lots of things lying all over the floor. And but how was Jeffrey Epstein not monitored? Why were these guards asleep? Why was he allowed to make a phone call to his mother, for example,
Right.
with no monitoring? But it may not have been to his mother, allegedly.
Well, it was unmonitored. That's the thing, though. That's the thing. It was.
His mother was dead. So, the nonsense of what he was doing. Why was he allowed to transfer money to his brother? 567 million, I think the sum was. I may be completely
whoa. This all sounds massively sketchy. In fact, you know what? It almost sounds like what you would do if you were going to fake your own death.
Well, I don't believe he faked his death. I really don't. I think he is dead. It was better to get rid of him because he was a liability, and keeping him in a prison, he wouldn't be there forever. But
well, what about the argument then of Ghislaine being the one who is driving Epstein? Do you think then that Ghislaine's going to fizzle away and she's going to get a backdoor deal, and then Epstein really has gone?
Ghislaine was told by her father to go to New York when it all went wrong. Ghislaine did all the crying on the boat and spoke for the family. Where were Kevin and Ian and all the rest of them? I obviously only knew Isabel. That's the only one I really knew, because I didn't know Isabel was a Maxwell when I met Isabel. I went to California in the early 2000s when I was involved in Sky Vodka and the related businesses of Maurice Canbar, a businessman who created the Deposit sweater comb, invented the multiplex cinema and all sorts of things. And I used to go to his film festival, and I met this man, Dale Gerassi. Dale Gerassi, his family invented the birth control pill. And obviously, I'm sure Jeffrey was fascinated by such things. But he was married to a lady called Isabel at the time, and they had a ranch in a place called Woodside in California, and it was full of artists, and I was invited to go there and visit, and it was a fascinating place, and I met lots of lovely people. I didn't know I knew Isabel Gerassi. I didn't know her as Isabel Maxwell. I'd never even had made the connection, because I was a young person there was no reason for me to ask, because there was no mention of Robert Maxwell. I'm sure Isabel had decided at that point in her life she just didn't want to talk about the problems of her own father and her mother and everything. Her mother did a lot of good for the world. Her mother was actually a very good person. She did a lot for the Jewish community in the Holocaust, and she was a brilliant lady of amazing mind, from what everybody has told me positive things about Betty Maxwell and how she suffered. And she tried to divorce Robert Maxwell, and of course he controlled her, and he controlled everybody else. But she ended up living in a tiny little flat in the Cundy Street flats off Elizabeth Street in Belgravia, which was where the Duke of Westminster basically put all the people he felt sorry for. But I don't know how she got a flat in there, but she somehow lived in there. They were just basic small flats. I know a lady who lives in one of it's been pulled down now to make way for some fancy apartment building, but it was basically a place that was full of small flats, and that's how Betty Maxwell ended her days, in a tiny flat. And but what happened with Ghislaine was, she went to New York and she did an interview. I can't remember who did the interview. She sits in a park and she says, they've taken everything from me. They've even taken my teaspoons. I've got nothing. I'm poor. I've got nothing. She made out that she was basically like a homeless person, but she somehow managed to get to New York, and she was living in a small apartment. Within a year, she owns a $10 million house. How was that paid for? Who paid for that? The woman with no money gets a $10 million house. And by then, she was linked with Jeffrey Epstein. And as I've repeatedly said, there was a memorial lunch in 1992, I think it was, in New York, where Betty Maxwell and Ghislaine gave a memorial lunch for Robert Maxwell. And lots of famous people attended still. By then, I don't think the whole house of cards had really fallen apart. It may have been late 1991, but he died in November. He died on bonfire night, so it must have been in 1992. I wasn't expecting to talk about this, otherwise I'd have my notes. But he, at the lunch, there was a photograph, the top table, sitting between Betty Maxwell and Ghislaine is Jeffrey Epstein. Now, if he isn't a close family friend at this stage, why would he be at the top table? Why would he be sitting between them? That is a very strange situation, in my view. That man obviously had been very, very useful to them, because that was why he was placed in the seat of honor at the dinner. And that is why I believe he was the money funnel that was used. He was great at mathematics. He was great at connecting, weirdos and not decent sorts. And I do believe that is what occurred. I think that they used him as the money funnel to hide the money. Betty Maxwell still owned a chateau when she died in France. She wasn't poor. She didn't live out her days in poverty. She did a deal to keep some money. So, like they all do. They always do a deal, these widows, these poor old, hard but done by. I'm not saying that she was a bad person, essentially, because everybody who I've spoken to about her said, she was the long-suffering wife, and she did try and escape him, but she couldn't. She just couldn't get away because he wouldn't allow it. She knew that he had all these other women in his life, Robert Maxwell, and she just had to put up with it. And she probably was abused by him. He was a tiresome, evil man who probably was physically abusive. He was a brute, and I don't blame Betty Maxwell for any of this. I think Betty Maxwell was forced to have all those children with him, and she probably tried to keep the marriage for the sake of the children. And look how the children turned out, warped like their father, all of them. Even Isabel. I didn't even realize Isabel was in Maxwell. She just tried to hide it. That was how weird she was. And, one died in a car crash, and there's all sorts of weird things that going on in that family. But I think that photograph of that dinner is the proof that we need. That is that Robert Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were close associates before he died, and the 500 million that was funneled via La Hogue and Liechtenstein and Panama and wherever else went to keep Ghislaine in her lifestyle that she was accustomed. And then she ended up with the $10 million house. She ended up with the $10 million house in the Manchester by the Sea with her new husband. And why was he a submarine pilot? That was an interesting thing. And of course, there was a submarine docking station on the islands. I am a fount of all knowledge about this ridiculous case. It is ridiculous how boring I am about, this. People must be absolutely sick to death of hearing me with my little facts that are just kind of random. But
people love your facts, Matthew. People love them. Details. Yeah. No, people love your insight into all of this, Matthew. It's great.
So, yes. Right.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm going to...
So I apologize for the noise. There's a boat turning.
That's all right. Okay, so our good friend of the channel, Paula, she has been sort of putting some connections between Meghan Markle and Virginia together. Have you heard of anything with Meghan Markle and the island, Epstein, and what is basically being declared as a pretty shady past of Meghan Markle? Have you got anything to add to that?
What I would say, no, I don't think Meghan Markle was texting Virginia, but that's not in Meghan Markle's interest to do. That's a strain. That would not.
You never know, Matthew. You never know. I'm telling you. You just never know.
The truth can be stranger than fiction, but what I would say is that is a highly unlikely thing to occur at this stage when Meghan Markle's busy trying to launch her brands. Her stupid jam, and
she doesn't launch anything. She talks about launching businesses, Matthew. Oh, no, it's a sample rundown.
Yeah, no, but she's launched the rosé, and it's been described as tasting worse than a tin can. It's disgusting, allegedly. The lady also, in the Daily Mail yesterday sampled it in a park next to Buckingham Palace, probably St James's Park or Green Park.
Well, I just want to say, anyone who wants to check out the theories and the communication, go and check out Paula M. She's fantastic.
Yeah, well,
right, next question.
But what I will say, going back to Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew, is yes, there is the allegation of the yacht girl, and I don't think the dates probably tally. She was involved in something called the Yacht Week, and I knew the man who ran this thing called the Yacht Week. It was a party for young people. I think she went on that with the mix of this Omid, Scooby, and all the rest. But I don't, Samantha Markle and I speak very often, but I don't think the dates quite tally. The lady who, sent me some messages this morning, her husband was the person who had the yacht that the supposed person was on. Whether she denies any of this ever happened, and it was a long time ago. But she is somebody who has her own opinions on the matter. And I'm
telling you, Mathew, there's a lot of people sweeping a lot of things under a lot of rugs.
I can agree with you there, but I will say, out of all of the things that I'm interested in, it's the £500 million that was stolen from the pensioners, on top of these victims. One of my friends was one of the victims of Ghislaine. She doesn't want to be named. She was the British victim, and I do know the lady, and I'm in touch with her, but she doesn't do media. She's not interested in. She wants to move on with her life. She doesn't live in England anymore, and she's somebody I knew separately. She'd had a relationship with somebody else famous, and weirdly they used my former home as a place for their photo shoot. But we have differing accounts here, and I will say, this lady who I know, I don't agree with much of what she comes out with about the excuses for what went on, and in her friendship with Victoria Harvey, and I've told her I just think Victoria Harvey's she's just a gob for hire.
We'll get to Victoria.
Victoria is not. Well, I think before, is it possible I might just go and get myself another drink, because I'm boiling hot. I will be back in 2 seconds.
No problem. I just want to say as well, I'm going to replay.
You can play something else whilst I disappear for
I will.
2 seconds. I just want
to say
I am absolutely boiling. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no problem.
And my friends keep asking me, what am I drinking? It's ridiculous. So I'm getting all these text messages. What are you drinking?
You're crazy.
I've had lots of Pellegrino this morning as well, but I do need something else that's cold. I need a cold drink. So I'll be back in 1 second.
No problem, Mathew. I just want to say, if you guys can all like and share, that would be great. I just want to say thank you to Freebie. I'm going to replay your message here. Yeah, so basically they're called cat balls. Okay, they're not called dog balls, they're called cat balls. But yeah, I'll order some cat balls. And what I tend to do with the cat balls is make a little mound of dirt or sand and sit the ball in it so that it can't be moved. And we know that it's something that's touching the internals. You can't hear me. You can hear me. You can. Hang on. Why not? I don't know. You should be able to hear me. There we go. Matthew's looking sun-kissed is what he's doing.
Back again. I will show you the bottle. There you are. Then, in case you want some Viognier. There you go.
Viognier. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
My French is terrible. So don't please excuse my pronunciation. Absolutely awful. But I brought the bottle outside with me because I thought it would be easier, because it is actually boiling hot sitting here. And I didn't want to put my fan on because I thought the fan would make a horrible noise in the background. So, but I'm hiding under an umbrella, so I'm quite, just
quite loving it, man.
It's lovely to be in the south of France. There's nothing wrong with being here. There's lots going on, and anyway, cheers to you all. So thank you very much for having the patience to listen to mad old me.
Oh, we love listening to you, Mathew. So this is from KLG, one of our mods. Back to Trump and the whole list thing. Do you think there was possibly bribery or possibility that Trump was threatened to not let this list go out? Refer to it as you want, the address, put the list. It would be very damning because of how the internet would react to any names on there. So do you think that there was possibly threats or bribery to stop it being released? Or do you straight up believe what the FBI are telling us?
I don't believe what the FBI are telling us, that it's boring and it's irrelevant. I believe that Donald Trump has chosen to exercise his own personal power to protect himself, because Donald Trump is only interested in one thing: Donald Trump. He doesn't care about anything else other than himself. He is a megalomaniac. He's a profiteer, and he is, up to no good. Like what he's doing with his turning up to visit Turnberry. He thought he could get King Charles to turn up and, make his golf course look a bit more, royal. And, of course, King Charles is not available. So King Charles did not want to go and watch Donald Trump tee off at Turnberry, did he? It's not exactly what he should be doing as a king. And, he's got the dignity to say, please come and have a second state visit, which, quite frankly, is historic and unprecedented. And but he won't be speaking in Parliament. And Donald pretends, he doesn't mind that he's not going to be speaking in Parliament. But quite rightly, do we need Donald Trump speaking in Parliament? No thanks. We've already had Macron last week, and that's bad enough. And I'll tell you this, all these French people I know here, they cannot stand Macron. They all think, there's the rumors of him. There's the conspiracy theory, him and his lovely wife, whatever she is. There's what every single French person I speak to tells me the same thing. They don't like Macron, and they don't like the wife, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people across the board have just got so many questions about just how unreal it feels with the Diddy case and the Epstein case. So,
the P. Diddy case, I don't know much about. I can't claim to be an expert on that. I don't know him, never met him, don't know. The only rappers I knew were the Wu-Tang Clan, and I've had dinner with members of the Wu-Tang Clan many times. They're great people.
Okay, all right, Mathew.
Rap, who was an 80-year-old woman, and I think the Wu-Tang Clan are absolutely brilliant. I love them very much.
All right, can we get some ones in the side chat if you ever thought you would hear that sentence come out of Mathew Steeples' mouth? Okay, I was chilling out having dinner with the Wu-Tang Clan, like probably the most iconic.
I met them via a wonderful film in San Francisco that I went to a premiere. A screening at the San Francisco International Film Festival, which was run by my wonderful friend Roxanne Messina-Capta, who's a wonderful film director herself. And if Roxanne, you're watching, you're probably not, because you're probably asleep. It's Los Angeles, but you are a great lady. And I went to see a wonderful film called Coffee and Cigarettes. It was 11 short films by Jim Jarmusch. And it featured the likes of Kate Blanchett, who I had a great dialogue with, and I'm still in contact with. We've been on the BBC Radio 4 things together on one thing, and we do things on Twitter occasionally. And there was Iggy Pop, the RZA, of course, of the Wu-Tang Clan. The Gaza, of course, was killed, sadly. And there was Steve Coogan, and it's basically 11 short vignettes where they talk about something in their life over coffee and cigarettes, and some of them were kind of true and some of them were a bit made up, but it was a great little black and white short film. And Jim Jarmusch is one of the most brilliant directors. I love his work, and I was very lucky to meet him. And then the same day I met Eli Roth, who makes all the films with Quentin Tarantino.
Eli Roth. Oh, yes. My God.
So Eli made the Cabin Fever thing, which was that was the film that he showed. And it's not really my kind of film, but he and I got on very, very well, and he was a great guy. So that was my first visit to a film festival, and I was probably about 19, and that's when I met these people, and they come up with some great things, these people at these film festivals. I saw a wonderful film. I sat next to the lady, oh gosh, I forget her name, the Patty Hearst. So Patty Hearst was a film about Patty, who obviously was a victim of Stockholm syndrome, if you believe her. I sat next to her, and I sat next to her former bodyguard at a film about her. And, I went to a dinner with them, and I got to know the Hearsts, and, the things that she did. She robbed banks, and she was with the Symbionese Liberation Army, and she went mad with all these people. And then she got a presidential pardon from good old Bill Clinton because daddy was rich. I was very lucky to meet all of these kind of people at these kind of festivals, and Like with Sean Atwood, when we did a thing at the Crime Con, I met this ridiculous pair, and they came up to me and they said, "Hello, we've got a book. We'd like you to read it." And they gave me a book, and it was about Dennis Nielsen, the revolting gay serial killer. Horrible, horrible man. A bit like the Britain's equivalent of Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about.
So Dennis Nielsen, the one who was a police officer, and he'd been a civil servant and all the rest. And oh yes, he lived in Muswell Hill or somewhere in North London, and he liked putting, he liked inviting homeless people around. He'd pick up in Soho and Earl's Court and all these kind of places, which of course were very gay areas at the time. There were lots of travelers and lots of Australians, particularly in Earl's Court, but Soho obviously very much associated with LGBTQ plus X whatever. I can't remember all the rest of it. And honestly, this couple, they said, "Oh, we've written a book about Dennis Nielsen." I said, "Well, why would you write a book about Dennis Nielsen?" And they said, "Oh, he was our friend."
Oh, wow. Wow.
I've got the book. I've still got the book.
Yeah,
and
dude,
they,
I did not expect.
It gets far worse. So I said, "Well, what made you write the book about him?" He said, "We inherited all his possessions."
Oh my God.
And I said, "Oh, well, how many were there?" She said, "Oh, 2 container loads." She said, "Dennis was a lovely..." She came out with it first ahead of him. She said, "Oh, Dennis was a lovely person."
Are you still in contact? Do you know who these people are? Are you in contact with them?
I'm not in contact with them, but I've got their book. I've never ever. They did give me their email address. It's somewhere in one of my notebooks, but I've never actually spoken with them.
You ever come across that email? You let me know. We'd be very interested in talking to them.
No, you can read the book. You can find it. It's online. It's widely published, this book. It's not some self-published book. So I said, "Oh, what was it you liked?" Oh, she said, "Oh, he was very nice to birds."
Oh, I'm sorry. Is this? Are you now giving us insight? Is this a confession?
No, is
this a confession that we're going to see you? Matthew's going to come back to England.
Yeah, it's a bit Brooks like those. So no, he was very kind to birds, and he was very kind to ladies, she said.
You like birds and you're kind to ladies, Mathew. I'm just saying.
I'm kind to all sorts of people. I don't. But I will say. So what he said? They said next was, "Oh, he didn't really mean to do it."
I'm sorry, authors. If you're watching this, the man kept hollowed out bodies under floorboards because he was lonely. The only reason he's in jail.
Well, let me explain the reason. I've read the book, and the reason he because it was basically his book. They basically took his words because he was allowed typewriters, and he had thousands. And this is why there were 2 containers, because of all. He was allowed to keep a bird in his cell to keep him company. He was given all sorts of weird privileges because he was such a weirdo, and they obviously wanted to just keep him under control. So they gave him a bird. So he we've got more boats going around, and please excuse the noise of the boats, but they're going fast, this lot. Some young people, and they're driving too fast. We've had a death here with a boat. Sorry, I'll come to that in a moment. But anyway, Dennis Nielsen, the reason Dennis Nielsen got caught was he always chose victims who were down and outs, and when you were down and out, and there's no social media because it's the 1980s, 70s. There's no form of real way of no mobile phones, none of that, and these people were forgotten about people, so nobody ever asked where did they go. So he would get them drunk in a bar in Soho or Earl's Court, and then he'd say, "Come back to my house." And then they'd say, "Well, I want to leave," exactly as happened with Jeffrey Dahmer. It was when they wanted to leave that was the problem, because he couldn't stand being left alone by them.
This man that we are talking about, Nielsen, when he was caught, he wanted to be caught. He was done. He was at the end of wanting to keep this a secret. And he got a plumber out to try and fix
No. He didn't get a plumber out. No, that's an untrue story.
Okay.
No,
Well,
the plumber was called by the neighbors.
The neighbors. Okay.
No, the neighbors called because of the smell, because the smell just got worse and worse. And he was burying them in the garden, and he was burying them under the floorboards, and he kept them in the fridge, and just like Jeffrey Dahmer. And my one of my friends, Ted Bundy again, another one. All of these people. One of my friends played Ted Bundy's wife in a film, and she had to study all of that. So. And she wrote me a message earlier saying, I think she'll be watching Alexa Jago, who made a brilliant film called Kajaki, which is about Afghanistan and the poor soldiers there. And, it was a 10th anniversary of it last November, and I went to that. And amazing film, and well done to Alexa Jago. But going back to Dennis Nielsen, he got caught for one reason. No, it wasn't to do with everybody talks about the, what were they called? Dino Rod. It wasn't Dino Rod that did it. It was the fact that one of his victims, he met an American boy. The American boy was the son of, I think, an ambassador or a very, very highly connected man. And of course, he was hitchhiking and traveling around Europe, and he'd gone off to explore his life and try and do something. And of course, when he didn't contact them, they started asking questions. His previous victims were primarily nobodies. They were forgotten people. And I'm not saying these people were worthless. I'm saying these people did have a worth, and we should remember the victims' names. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the victims' names right now because I didn't expect to be talking about them, and I haven't got a list in front of me. But we should read out the list of every victim's name of that rather than remembering him, because he shouldn't be remembered. He's a creep. He's an evil bastard who murdered people. But this particular boy was the son of somebody rich and powerful. And they started harassing the police, saying, "Where is our son? What has happened?" And that's what caused his downfall. It's always somebody you don't expect. Like with Bernie Madoff, it was my friend's cleaner who went to the FBI. She was a Filipino, and she'd invested her life savings, $20,000, and she said, "I need my money back." And they said no. So she said, "I'm not having this." And she went to the FBI, and that's what brought him down. It wasn't the powerful journalist who'd been banging on since 1992 saying this man is corrupt, but they went, "Well, he's the chief of the NASDAQ, he's respectable, so of course he's not to be investigated, leave him alone." It's always the one you don't expect that will bring you down, and that's what happened with good old Dennis Nielsen. Well, bad old Dennis Nielsen. But honestly, I met that couple and I thought, what a strange pair. As my mother said to me at the time I spoke at that crime conference, she said, good Lord, what on earth are you doing going to speak at a crime conference? She said, "You'll meet a future serial killer." And I do think that I probably have met future serial killers at such events, because these people who are obsessed with true crime, many of them are a little obsessive. This is why this genre has suddenly taken off. But it's mostly middle-aged ladies who like watching Netflix and podcasts, and I think it's fascinating. I find it fascinating myself. But honestly, meeting people like that who just make excuses. And then the other one I met at the same event was, do you remember the case of John Christie, Rillington Place? The murders by a very nasty man, and of course a poor man called Timothy Evans, who was wrongly accused.
John
Christie, 10 Rillington Place in Notting Hill.
Yeah, see, I've got that here.
Yes, well, so John Christie.
Yeah, take us through that if you can.
So John Christie owned a house in a place called Rillington Place. Well, so he lived in a house. I don't know whether he owned it. He may have rented it. Probably rented it. At that time, most places probably were rented. It was a house of multiple occupation, effectively, as you would call it today. It had lots of flats. It was basically like a slum. Notting Hill today is a very trendy area, but back then it was a pretty rough area. And this man, he was a petty thief. He'd been a police officer in the war, so he had privileges. And he was in abortions because abortion was it was very hard to do it. So he would help, but he developed a tendency to enjoy giving the abortion, give them gas, and of course,
damn,
women.
That is dark.
And there was a young couple, and her name was Beryl, the wife. He moved into the building, and they already had a child. And Timothy found out that Beryl was pregnant. Said, "I don't want to have this child because we can't afford any more children. We're too poor." He was a little bit strange of mind, and he was scared. And this man said, "Oh yes, I can deal with your problem." Said Mr. Christie. Did what he did, and
damn,
he said,
dude, this is
oh dear, Timothy died, so we have to hide her. So he hid her, whatever, and Timothy was told to go away, and he said, "I'll deal with the problem, and you just go away." So of course, then the Evans family, the Beryl Evans, her family decided to come looking, and of course, this Christie wanted to preserve his own skin, so of course he put the blame on Timothy. He said, "Oh, his wife, his husband, obviously killed him." So he was.
I've never heard of this, John.
He was garroted, and that was the end of poor old Timothy. And Timothy should be pardoned, in my view. I don't know if he has been pardoned. Or I can't remember if he was, but anyway. So at the crime conference, along comes this old man, and I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he said, "Here's my book. They always give me my join in with them." And he said, "I'm the brother of Beryl Evans, the one who was killed by her husband." And I said, "Really?"
Wow.
I said, "Well, no, your sister was killed by John Christie. Let's be honest." "Oh no," she said, "John Christie was a lovely man." And again, it's very strange how some of these people go down this route. And I thought, what a strange pair. All of these people who believe
that's
the
crazy.
nonsense.
I've never heard this. I've never heard of this case.
If you follow the story, you will read. It's like with the story of the lady who lived in Edgerton Gardens, where I used to spend a lot of time in Knightsbridge, who, of course, was Ruth Evans, the last lady to be hanged in Britain. And
wow.
My friends own the Magdala pub in Hampstead, which was where she shot her lover. But she should not have been hanged because she was mentally unsound also. And, it's terrible. It's absolutely appalling. So, yes, do watch the films about 10 Rillington Place. There are lots of films. We watch the films. I recommend them to you, Ron. I think it's a good thing.
I'm going to be jumping into this case. Actually, the next show I'm doing today, you can maybe give us your take on this too. If I give you the name Constance Martin.
Oh yes, Constance Martin, the lady who was an aristocrat who killed her own baby. Yes, and did all sorts of other things. Her mad husband. I've tried to avoid reading too much about it because, quite frankly, there's so much out. The Daily Mail have got like an 8-page pullout from yesterday, and I read bits of it, and I just thought, I feel sorry for her mother. Her mother is, she's been there trying to support her, and this woman rejects everything. This woman had it all, and she wouldn't even take the help from the lawyers.
Well, that's at 3:00 today. I'm going to be covering that case. Yeah. I found out about it this morning.
I know I've known a lot about it. She was a Tatler, frontispiece. She was a perfectly sane person until she went to Africa and she met a mad preacher.
Okay,
that's from what I read. The mad preacher is where she went mad. That's who turned her, and she went. And her father went off to live in Australia as a destitute, and all sorts of strange things happened. So she obviously had a very strange upbringing. And but her poor mother, it's terrible for her. And her brother tried to support her there, but that man who she was involved with, he's a monster who'd raped people when he was 14 years old. He was disgusting. He's absolutely sick in the head, that one. And the two of them together were obviously a toxic combination. I can't tell you any more than that because I'm no expert on that case. I don't follow that case.
No, 100%.
I better not say any more because
No.
I've only read little bits, and it's like the woman who did the mushroom poisoning in the beef Wellington in Australia, which someone who I know wrote all the story for the Mail, and he was there for 10 weeks for the trial, and how weird it was that trial, and what a strange woman she was. And again, privilege, and why do you need to end up doing such a thing? Why would you behave like this? With all that privilege, you don't need to go down that path. That path is not a good path to go down when you've got it all. I have a friend currently who's in a mental asylum, and he comes from a very wealthy family. I'm not going to say who he is, and I'm not going to go into detail, but everything has gradually gone wronger and wrong, and nobody can even contact him anymore. And I used to go and visit him, and and I've seen the kind of people. Once you're in that environment, the saddest part, because all of that success, and you end up warped mind because various a very different kind of thing to what went on in Place, because 10 Rillington Place was a destitute place. It was full of, and it was after the war, and it wasn't a very nice time, and these people were poor, and they were. This man Christie was a manipulator, and he even murdered his own wife, I think, in the end. And everybody was murdered, and Pierpoint was right to chop off his head because, quite frankly, there's no redemption for people like that. The darkest people on the planet. I'm not in favor of the death penalty, by the way, but that was that time, and it got rid of the.
If certain people fit the criteria and they fall into the meat grinder, we're okay with it. Do you know what I'm saying?
No,
we're not going to encourage it.
I'm not okay with the death penalty at all, really. No. I shouldn't have probably said that, but
that's okay. That's okay. Listen,
but anyway,
sometimes
next question.
Well, look, we're getting on to close to our end, so make sure everybody get your questions in for Mathew. I just want to say, Mathew, it's always fabulous talking to you. Hopefully, we're going to try and meet once a week and see what else we can come up with, because you've got so many interesting stories and factoids. We could all listen to you all day. It's freaking awesome. So get your questions.
I think I bore people to death, to be honest.
No,
I try to look up some I'm writing a quiz book, and I hope you'll all be able to buy a copy of my quiz book when it's published, hopefully for Christmas. It's full of ridiculous questions about ridiculous things and place names and Northumberland slang and Liverpudlian slang and sport and
100%.
Auction prices and all sorts of weird things. The weird, the wacky, and the wonderful. That's what I like.
What we want to see is we want to see people buying copies of the book, and then we want to see hashtags on Instagram of you hosting your quiz nights, having your friends around, maybe your own pubs, whatever. But let's collectively see.
And I'm going to be doing a little tour of the UK. I have a friend who wants to help me organize this, and I'm going to go to different places, hopefully Northern Ireland, amongst others, because I've got loads of Northern Irish people. I've got loads of Southern Irish people as well, and Scotland, and places like Norfolk and Devon. I've got to go to Devon. I've got to go to Somerset because I've got to help Sir Benjamin Slade, my lovely friend Sir Ben, with his beavers. He's very into the beavers with Ben Goldsmith, and I want to go and help him. And he's got a campaign against the corrupt insurance companies, and I'm going to help with that. I want to help him down there at his lovely home, his country estate, Monsell House. I want to go and visit that and do that. I've got loads of things to do, and then I've got to go to California because I've got to go and do some things there. With a members club, I want to give them some advice. They want my advice, and I want to help them. So I want to go and be a bit more jet set. But I've been time here in France. It's been absolutely great being in France. I love all these people here. and it's been great. And the lady whose house it is, she's doing great. She's coming along better. She's getting a bit better, and good for her, and good for everybody for being happy. That's what we've all got to be, because we don't want to be like Keir Starmer, the farmer harmer. We don't want to be like Rachel Reeves, the Queen of Thieves. We don't want to be like Raving Rainer, the disgusting Raving Rainer as the Pips. We've got to to these awful people, and we don't want, Kemi Badenoch, Kemi Bad Enough, and we don't want Nigel Farage, as I call him, Farage, as you call him, the Queen. He is the Queen of Help Yourself. And as for America, I'm not a great fan of Donald Trump, but at least he's upsetting the apple cart in some ways. He's better than Biden. Nobody.
Give me 1 second, Mathew. 1 second.
So it seems I better keep talking because he's been turning himself off. So anyway, I don't know how we say. If any of you have any questions, the door in here is about to close itself, so there may be a noise, but no, it's actually stopped. It's not quite like the Titanic; it's not sunk yet. So anyway, it's great that you're all here, and it's great that you're all joining in. And I don't know what I'm to say other than I'm continuing to go. I'm not being asked any questions. So yes, my final thoughts on good old Ghislaine, or bad old Ghislaine. Well, here we are, Ghislaine. My final thoughts on her. Alan Dershowitz, who secured the sweetheart deal for Epstein. Alan Dershowitz was considered a wonderful man, and obviously I knew Klaus von Bülow, who was married to a lady who obviously inspired the film The Reversal of Fortune, Jeremy Irons and Meryl Streep. And Alan Dershowitz was the good guy back then. Alan Dershowitz obviously had a little incident with Virginia Roberts, and obviously Virginia got it wrong. She had to apologize to Alan Dershowitz. But Alan Dershowitz was very involved with obviously Trump and Epstein, but Mr. Dershowitz, has tried to advocate for Ghislaine in some ways, but he was wronged by Virginia. One has to admit, because she had to apologize. So she got it wrong. As a victim, you don't remember everything, but equally, you can't go around accusing everybody. And that's why I say that this lady called Juliet should not be going around saying that people are, Jeffrey Epstein turned into an alien. It's completely ridiculous. He was not an alien. He was a human being, whether you like him or not. He was a revolting human being, but he was never an alien. So, and she said, unless you saw it for yourself, you wouldn't believe it. Well, no, I don't believe in aliens. I don't believe in conspiracy.
You've got to believe in aliens, Mathew. You can't tell us that the space is empty. Come on.
No, I'm not into aliens. I do believe in ghosts, but I don't believe in aliens. No, I'm very specific about ghosts. My grandmother was involved in the Society of the Paranormal, which, of course, Sherlock, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, was, of course, involved in, and Belgrave Square. And I do believe I have seen a ghost once in my life, and I am totally of the belief of ghosts.
Well, Mathew, 10 o'clock Saturday night, I'm going live for 7 hours in one of Edinburgh's most haunted and oldest graveyards, and we're going to be doing a full investigation. So,
okay, well, I do believe that people who are unsatisfied will continue to stick around, but people who are also satisfied. The ghost that I saw was a very friendly ghost, in my view. It was, the house we lived in. It was built on the site of a house that had burned down, and this man walked across with his dog across the landing, but I couldn't find the light switch, and that was it. And it looked to me as if to say, "You're welcome here." And that was all. And I was a child, and I was 10 years old. And yes, it could have been a trick of the light and all the rest of it. But I do believe I saw what I saw, and I will stick by that. But I'm not. Oh gosh, the door now. The door is swinging away. So maybe there's a ghost in this house. There we are. But
Mathew, I don't think you were wrong at all. But if you guys have got any more questions, get them in for Matthew, and of course we will be back. again soon with Mathew. And yeah, gotta just say thank you for being here as always, my good man.
Okay, well, thank you. I don't know how much longer you want to keep me, or you got more questions? Any more questions?
Yeah, well, we've got about another 10 minutes on the show. I'm going to.
Okay, well,
yeah,
10
about
minutes.
10 minutes.
I'll pull myself.
And also, Mathew, also,
yes.
Everybody here thinks that you're incredibly informative, entertaining, engaging. So you need to do away with all of this. Oh, people don't want to hear me. I'm boring everyone nonsense, because it's quite the opposite. Quite the opposite.
You know, I'm not the expert on anything. I'm just somebody who has an opinion, and opinions are, you know, like certain things.
Some of the most famous and entertaining people in the world, Mathew, are not experts in nothing. Okay, they're just good at the art of conversation, and you've got that in spades. So it's awesome.
Well, I was very lucky because I was brought up by two wonderful parents who said to me, "You will come downstairs and you will be sociable with our guests when they arrive, and you will know when to leave, and then you can do whatever you want for the rest of the evening." And that was the nicest thing. And then they said the only two things they said: every book you're given at school is a load of rubbish. Read decent books. And I read, and I love to read, and I love to read. Reading, my dad reads 5 books at his age. He reads 5 books a week, and reading is the most important thing. And the lady upstairs here reads the newspaper every day. And I've been trying, that's what we've been doing since we got here. It's a good thing to challenge your mind. Okay, the newspaper isn't, you know, the best thing for reading, but it does somehow help keep your mind challenged. Always do things like crosswords, keep yourself going, because, you know, my poor grandmother, she has dementia, and it's not very nice because she doesn't remember who anybody is. And we have to get certain people to call because they are people she can remember. And if you keep reading, like my father, when you're very, very old, you can be absolutely brilliant, you know, and keep going, and you can keep interacting with life. He's not that old, but he's old, you know. But, you know, that man who died today, he was 114, the Indian man who did the marathons. Absolutely amazing story. I was fascinated to hear about it. I'd never heard of the man. So but, you know, he kept going because he kept socially interactive. It's when you lock yourself up in a room and just ignore the world and sit in a chair and just don't do anything that you become deadbeat. You've got to keep going. And reading is, to me, the most important thing, because not enough people read, and that is why J.K. Rowling is so important. What a great lady she is, and the way she's spoken out against this LGBTQ plus XYZ and all the rest of it, I say good for her. They've tried to cancel her, all those Eddie Redmaynes. Shame on you, Eddie Redmayne. You're otherwise a perfectly nice man, but you made a fortune because of her. You know, you got rich. And you, Emma Thompson, you've just been Emma, what's her name? No, not Emma Thompson. Emma, whatever her name was.
I can't remember.
You know, the one who was in Harry Potter.
Not Chamberlain.
She's been banned from driving today. That's so, you know, serves you right. Nasty piece of work.
What was her name? Are you talking about Hermione?
Emma Watson.
Watson.
Yeah, Watson. She's hardly anything from Sherlock Holmes, is she? No, but shame on you, you nasty piece of work, for trying to cancel. And Stephen Fry. Oh, he's the worst. I can't stand Stephen Fry.
Stephen Fry.
Oh, he's the worst person I've ever spent a weekend with.
Wow.
The worst person I've ever had to go to a house party with. I was expecting to love Stephen Fry, and honestly, what a nasty, awful, boring man he is. So I went to a house party in Norfolk, and there were lunches and dinners, and the person who had the house sadly died, and lovely man. I won't say his name, but he had wonderful cooks and chefs and everything in to cater, and he was involved in hospitality himself. He owned hotels and things, and he had helicopters and everything. It was a lovely man. He lived a bit beyond his means. He liked the company of very attractive people, the young ladies and all sorts of people, and he had all sorts of wonderful friends, and You know, everybody came to his parties. Because he was a legendary party host. His drinks were the best. On a Sunday morning, you'd have the bull shot, which of course is not the Bloody Mary, but it's beef consomme with instead of the tomato juice. Honestly, wonderful, wonderful drinks. Everything perfectly made, and there was Stephen Fry. So all we had to put up with all weekend at every lunch and dinner was, "Oh, I'm Stephen Fry. I've done this. I've done that." Oh. It was the most boring weekend of my life.
Well, look, I just want to say, BRMC, there's no way we could survive the Mathew Steeples drinking game. Okay, I seen what you said at the start of this, where we're like, okay, every time Mathew tells a story about one of his friends and mentions a name, we all have to have a shot. We'd be dead by the end of this. Mathew's stories are so intricate.
No, but I don't. I know, but I have friends here in Godfrey.
Too good.
I have a friend who is a tramp. He lives in the woods. He has a donkey, and he's my
100%.
friend.
100%.
I love people from every walk of life. I just love.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Yeah, it's in no way a criticism thing, Matthew.
No, it's not criticism at all. But I enjoy life, and I think we should all enjoy the company of everybody. You should.
So do I.
You know, until someone is obnoxious, don't. But obviously, the stories of the obnoxious person are more interesting than the stories of the pleasant person. But there are plenty of pleasant stories one can tell. So. You know, I've got lots of stories of pleasant people, and I've told you a few already today. You know how I met the Wu-Tang Clan.
We absolutely love all your stories, all of the intricacies of the people you know, and the fact that you are incredibly liked by a lot of folk. And you know, I think
I'm incredibly loved by a fair few also. Don't worry.
We don't talk about them. We don't care about them.
Don't worry about the Eccleston family. They're top of the list. But good old Eccleston.
Well, I think you're fabulous. So does the side chat. What I'm going to do, Matthew,
any more questions? Any more questions?
We've only got a couple of minutes left. But look, I want to just play. I'm going to play us out with the trailer for my ghost hunt on Saturday. Now, you say you believe in ghosts. What you're about to see here, Matthew.
We've just experienced the telegraph blew away.
What you're about to see here, Matthew.
You obviously summoned up the ghost of the telegraph. So,
thank you, Chile. So this is all real, Matthew. This is the realness.
Right, okay.
This was me in Greyfriars Kirk a few years ago, and everything is real. So check this out, and then we'll come back for a quick close, and then we'll see you all on the next one. Have a look. So the meter, which is still going off, is at the other side of this archway. I'm standing right here, and it's just constantly going nuts. Oh my God, the spirit box just went on in my pocket. What the Wait for it, Matthew. Wait for it.
Oh, here we go.
Thank you. Do you want to use this box here to try and talk to me? Did you just tell me to run? Wait for it. Wait for it, Matthew. Wait for it. Is there something you want to tell me? Is that you lighting up the meter for a start? To answer me, is that you lighting up this meter? Watch this. I'm going to move this meter, guys. Whoa! Holy, move this meter, guys. Whoa! Now, as we know, Matthew, when something falls, it doesn't tend to fall and then fire off to the side. So I cannot explain what moved that, what threw that. That was as real as it gets, bro. And it was all happened live in front of about 2,000 people over YouTube. And now we are going back. Did you see that? Here we go. Watch. That's where I'm stood.
I want to show you something. Do you see this hole? Right? Do you see where the meter is? I want to show you something. The meter is slotted in. I can't knock that out of there. Do you see? Do you see? Do you see? Was that you aggressive?
So live 10 o'clock on hang on a second. It's definitely not on June 26th. It's on Saturday the 19th. So I don't know why the date's wrong. Hang on a second. But Mathew, come and check it out. It's going to be an absolutely crazy night.
It reminds me of the night that was it the BBC did a program on
that traumatized me as a child. I had nightmares about
me also because we had our housekeeper looking after me and my sister. She was the one who was obsessed with the fact that her daughter had hanged herself and all sorts of things, and she terrified me and my sister that evening by making us watch this program and then going on about her own situation, and my mother was very upset by this, and it was a truly awful evening. So
yep, I remember
I can't remember the blonde lady who was the presenter, and I don't think it was Philip Schofield, but it was somebody of that type.
No,
it was somebody of that type.
I don't think in the history of the world has there been anything that had more complaints than Ghostwatch that Halloween. I mean, put it this way, everyone who's watching, right? We're talking about the BBC faking a huge paranormal investigation that had been declared as a real event, and man, it was pretty well. But look, Mathew, thank you so much for being here. Mathew, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you. No, just a moment. It was presented by. It was presented by who?
I'll tell you in a second. Ghostwatch. Was it not the lady that got shot?
Sarah Green. It was Sarah Green.
Sarah Green. There you go. Jill Dando. What am I talking about?
It was not. It was not Jill Dando. No. It was definitely not Jill Dando. So.
It was
crazy. Sarah Green was the presenter, and it made my sister very upset. And there was one child who leapt through a patio door. Horrible name for a door. Patio door.
It was up there with the War of the Worlds situation when that was aired on the radio, and people were freaking out and going all over the place. So, 100%. Well, look, Mathew, thank you for being here. We'll hopefully see you again next week.
Yes.
And safe travels. Safe travels. Let us know you get back to England safe. And I hope the birds are well. And get a bird feeder. And we all think you're fabulous.
I'm sorry we have no birds who have joined us today, but the birds are the birds, and this is their hour probably to go out and catch some fish. So they're having a good time.
That's it. Well, look, thank you so much.
Have a lovely afternoon, and thank you very much to you all. And I'm sorry to talk about such weird and wacky topics.
We love it. We love it. Make sure you subscribe to Mathew. Links are down in the description. Thank you to the mods. Thank you.
Please save the sloth.
Save the sloths. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you to the Sean Edward channel. Thank you to the mods.
Bye-bye.
Take care.